Have you ever been victimized by New Age spirituality?
We've been waiting for you. We've been waiting.
You're going to want to listen up.
I'm Megan, an intuitive life coach and Reiki master.
I'm Ryan, a professional astrologer, and we want to show you what spirituality is by talking about what it is not.
Con artist.
Yes.
Snake oil salesman.
There are so many susceptible people out there.
And then they're tainted. They're ruined. They don't want to come back to spirituality.
We still have a lot to learn, and we will humble ourselves and learn, I think, every freaking day. This is Clairannoyance,
a podcast of spiritual interference. Welcome back to Clairannoyance. Ryan,
hey.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm chilling. I'm all right.
Yeah, all right. When's the last time you had a mental health check-in?
I think we need to define mental health.
When's the last time you had a Reiki session?
I mean, that's been a while. It's been quite a while. I mean, with you, I've had you like distance do some stuff. And our guest today, I know, has done a couple distance things before when I was going through stuff, but I haven't done a Reiki session in a while. It's interesting because, I've learned Reiki through you. I'm a level 2 practitioner. And so I'm actually still so in my phase of learning about Reiki and just absorbing it. I think I don't feel like I'm in any space where I'm like compelled to be a Reiki master right now. But Reiki for me is so like energy work focused, yet I know it can have such an impact on your mental health, right? So I guess like I always think of mental health like talk therapy. Like I'm going to sit in somebody's office and lay on a couch and that's that.
You have a little bit of a block to talk therapy. You have a little bit of a
yeah, I don't like therapists. I don't know. I mean, like I haven't had good experiences overall. And I would say it's not even so much from my perspective. It's like other people's therapists and the way that I see a therapist be a puppet master in somebody else's life has really like I've had a therapist's words to someone else be like weaponized against me. And it's like, that therapist doesn't know me. I'm not in that therapist's office. Who is that therapist to tell me to something? Like, I don't know why. So I don't know. When do you feel like you even learned what mental health was?
That's such a good question. I think it's kind of like imprint. I mean, now it's such a hot topic. But growing up, I mean, when I had to attend anger management due to
that Mars and Aries
and Venus and Aries.
Yeah.
Don't cheat on me. But so because of that, I went into therapy when I was 17. This lovely little Chilean woman who just told me that, Megan, you are a winner. And so I was like, yeah, this is fucking great. Like I am a winner. And so that was kind of my first introduction. But before I was raised Catholic. So it's so, kind of taboo. You go to confession and it's like, all right, sir behind the screen, I've told you what's up, but like we don't have any practical like there's no practical tips going forward, Right. And so I think now it's such a different landscape where we have so many people like what I do and what our guest does 25 years ago. It's such a different ball game to be able to exist in the space that we do. And I'm so grateful for it. So that's a good question. I don't really have
I know. I don't know either. I feel like I remember going to the doctor, every year for your like checkup when your parents take you to the doctor and they're like, oh, be careful with these like, things and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But isn't it weird that we respected that physical check-in so much, but the mental check-in was never there, like in my mind. It wasn't until like high school when I started dealing with what I now know are mental health issues, but I didn't know what it was at that point in time. Should have sure as hell been put in therapy, but never was. I willingly saw a therapist for my first time when I was a sophomore in college at the end of my sophomore year. And it was a 10-week thing and I hated it. And then I transferred schools and I frankly, I want to say I never went to therapy again, but I did. recently. But I also didn't like that was a short-lived therapy thing too. I just kind of like got what I needed from it and moved on. I think I use other mechanisms. Anyway, I feel like before we get too deep into like therapy, mental health, all these things,
Yeah,
maybe we
let's
bring
bring him
on the
in.
expert.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's bring him in.
Ryan Hagan, I am so excited to present you to our listeners. Ryan is somebody I have now known for, I mean, God, what? I mean, I don't know, a year and a half? I should
Yeah.
have looked that up.
Oh, I can tell you, I've got a crazy memory. It was the summer of 2021. I think it was June.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it was totally last summer.
Mhm.
Yeah. When did you come to LA? Whatever. Ryan is like mind blowing. He is so multifaceted. And so maybe this will get confusing because I'm also Ryan, right? But so bear with us. But our voices sound different. And Ryan
Let's do like Ryan Hagan. Like that's how you
yeah.
Ryan Hagan, what do you think?
Yeah, he's the one that sounds more professional. um, but he is so wildly talented. We're gonna, you can check out his links in the show description notes. We'll also plug it at the end, so you can book him up. He has, done mediumship for me, and I was floored. He is a Reiki master, but also a certified mental health coach. And I mean, beyond that, he's like a well accomplished musician. I mean, so much. I won't even bother trying to explain it all. Ryan, please say hi and please explain a little bit about you and what you do.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. I get, exhausted myself trying to tell people what I do because I'm interested in so many things. And I think I just told myself at an early age, I was like, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? And so I just do all this stuff. And it's great. And it's also exhausting because they like you to be kind of like pigeonholed. It's easier to keep up with things. But yeah, so I am a musical artist and a songwriter. And I had a really great break right as COVID was hitting in 2020. And, I had a couple of tracks that got out in Europe on the radio and, was charting and had a great run. And then all of a sudden it was like the universe pressed pause on that. And COVID has affected all of us in so many ways. And I've been in therapy and studying mental health and, training on these kinds of things for years, just out of an interest and thinking maybe one day I would somehow be able to use that on my music platform. And I did. And then COVID hit and my music Instagram got hacked.
What?
And yeah, I had built up a pretty nice following. I mean, for an indie to have over 20,000 followers is a nice, to me, it wasn't the best.
Yeah, 20,000.
Yeah. And you were on your way. You were like, things were just happening for you. That's a mental health crisis right there.
Right. And I surprisingly took it really well. I was frustrated. And I think that it made me kind of step back and I was like, okay, what's important to me? And so I started doing some work here in Nashville, which is where I live. I started doing some readings and started using my coaching in my readings because there's something about the way that I read where I feel like when I get information for people, it's very much so, there are predictive things that happen in a reading, but also a lot of coaching and stuff that comes through, even in mediumship. And you can attest to this. And so I'm like, gosh, I don't think that I can do my spiritual work without the mental health background that I have. It's like just integrated. And so here I am. It's just kind of started to take off and it's, gotten wings. And so, yeah, so I have my own practice as a wellness coach and I do still continue to do my spiritual work doing mediumship and, psychic readings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a Reiki master as well. So we all have Reiki in common. Big believer in energy medicine. Also do some regressions and things like that. So I have kind of a wide range.
A lot of tools in your toolbox.
Tarot. Yeah.
I love it. I have such a interesting array of experiences throughout my week. So I love it.
I love that though, because being multi-passionate like that, not everyone, like when you have a wide variety because I have the same, then you're able to meet that person where they're at and help them accordingly. So I think that the fact that you didn't pigeonhole yourself is good, like, and then you're able to help such a wide magnitude of people. And you have just such lovely energy that people, they're probably, when they see you, they're probably like, yes, comfort, home, hello.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So what is spiritual? Like, how do you personally define spirituality?
It's how do you really define it in a couple of words? I like to start with saying that spirituality is the reality beyond our five physical senses. What is in existence that we can't, experience with just the human traits. And then maybe that's not even adequate because some people are seers.
Were you like, as a kid, do you remember being able to read people, just like be like, oh man, that guy is sad? And then, your mom would be like, no, it's not sad, like, like, or because I always had that. And I'd be like, yo, something is not right over there. Like, mind your business, kid.
Yeah. I used to kind of see spirit. And I just thought like there was extra people at family dinner, So
What's Fred here, guys?
I learned pretty quick that, that was different. And so I think in a way I sort of shut that down and I needed to. But one of my first experiences really tuning into like something happening that nobody else knew was we had a neighbor that was elderly man that was being taken advantage of by his son, like beating the snot out of him and like trying to basically kill him, I think, so he could get his money. And I didn't know how I knew, but I knew, and I reported it to the police, and they were like, "Okay,
How old were you?"
I was like in middle school or something.
I mean, like a 12-year-old being like, "Yeah, like 911." That is so. Did they believe you? Like
I think because it was a small suburb, they kind of like didn't have anything else going on probably. So they're like, all right, we'll get to it. And then they happened to pull up like as an incident was happening. I didn't know how I knew, but I started seeing it in my head and I felt really bad for this man. And I'm like, I think he's being hurt, like injured.
Wow.
I mean, to be like, 12, 13, 14 max and being like, that's brave, dude.
Oh, well, thank you. And it was kind of the beginning of the end for me because I thought that, I thought that I would maybe get run out of the house when I did that, just because I grew up really conservative Christian and like, we just don't talk about mystic stuff. I was always taught that it was bad and like ghosts were really demons and that kind of stuff. So I always thought there was something wrong with me growing up, but here we are.
Are your parents okay with it now?
Oh, yeah. I think some people in the family just find it easier not to really talk about. And it's something that I haven't really directly brought up. They just maybe know experiences that I've had. But my mom and I have talked about it a lot. And she thinks it's great. I think at first she was probably like, what in the world? But yeah, I mean, because there's so much stuff in a kid's childhood that, like they could maybe forget about things. But I think she did start remembering. And then she started actually tuning into some of my like live readings. And I've done.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've done some like mediumship stuff for her and Reiki and stuff. So yeah, I mean, she's cool with it now.
Okay, so this is like the spiritual side of things, but you're somebody that I totally respect on like a very different level. I love the woo-woo readers and all these like people who are so far out there. Cool. But you're somebody that always just brings it down to earth. You're always relating it to some scientific topic. Like, your shit beyond the spiritual side of things. And it really makes it so much more legitimate for me. So knowing the spiritual side of you, how do you define mental health?
Yeah. So mental health and spirituality, I think, really are two sides of the same coin. I like to think of mental health as being an acceptance and loving both the light and the shadow within you. It's this ability to integrate both and to accept both about yourself. And when we're not accepting the shadow is when we're not in mental health. Most of my clients find that they get comfortable pretty easy with me because I'm just like, I don't care. I mean, you can tell me whatever. We all have shame. We all have stuff that's like kind of tucked away that we don't talk about. And the less we talk about it, the more we have it. And so being able to normalize that for people, I think in and of itself is what some people just need sometimes, in acceptance of themselves. And then once we get them to acceptance, then we get them to love, like being able to love that part of us. And it makes it so much easier to be generous and love other people for their stuff too.
Do you find like, because I'm in Charleston, you're in Nashville, so we're in the dirty South. That like, because like LA West Coast, 20 years ahead when it comes to that.
I'm like on another planet.
So things are within the past 10 years, I would say, starting to normalize, and it becomes very rarely do I come across someone who doesn't know about Reiki or who doesn't know an energy healer. What's it like in Nashville? What's it been like for you to combine these two intersects? And like, did you have resistance at first? Were they like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, why is, like, sing your songs, bro. Like, stay in your lane, like.
Right. Yeah. When I started like tiptoeing towards this stuff and talking about it in interviews and stuff, when my music was kind of, out there and I had that social account, there were some people that were like, shut up and sing, like just entertain me. Right. And, that message wasn't for them. Right. It wasn't the right time. But here at Nashville, I actually find that it's this fascinating intersection of kind of all the stuff you stereotypically think about the South, right? It's Tennessee, Bible Belt and all that. And yet it's also this like really, it's growing like a weed, as we say down South. It's actually really pretty progressive. And I've even had some spiritual folks tell me, they're like, yes, there's a vortex over this area in Middle Tennessee. And, so I don't know. I will say where I had my spiritual awakening was in Nashville. So there really may actually be something to that. But yeah, I mean, you definitely have your corners of the city where it's like touristy and kind of, good old, Southern stuff. And so I'm probably not going to go do Reiki for people down on Broadway here where like all the honky tonks are. I mean, maybe I will one day, but yeah, there are those parts where people really aren't necessarily into it, and they kind of just want you to like read out of the Bible and sing from the hymnal. But there are these other parts that are like, I mean, just really popping as far as the spiritual community goes. It's crazy.
So many people from LA are moving to Nashville now. It's definitely like one of those progressive hubs in a much larger area that maybe lacks progress.
What was your spiritual awakening? Because I'm always so curious, because no one, it's never easy.
So my manager Anya and I were talking about this a while back, and I was like, I think for me, I've really started to learn that life is just this series of awakenings. Like I feel like I've had a lot of them, but probably the most like the apex one, like the big one, was in 2017, like going into 2018. And I just had this like life crisis. Like I was in therapy, but it wasn't helpful at that time. I was with a therapist I wasn't aligned with. I found that out later. Had a big breakup, and I knew there was something different about the relationship that I was in. It felt spiritual. It felt like a soul connection, and yet I wouldn't have used those words back then. And I was just broke. I mean, when I was in college, I got on an antidepressant for about a year, and I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. And that's not to judge medicine. People need it, but what we know, like in the pharmacological world, is that the mental health medicines, like they just numb the problem. They don't fix it. They can make it easier for a professional to access and to work with you. And then there are some like antipsychotics and stuff that are helpful for people with like, more severe stuff. But
lithium,
that was just going through depression. It was like nobody was asking me about my diet. How much are you exercising? Are you in therapy, seeing somebody about, your shadow issues, like I said before. And so like, I think I didn't know what I didn't know. And I just hit rock bottom. And so I knew I couldn't go back to medicine and do all that over again. So I got into meditation. I tried it and I hated it at first. I hated it. I always loved to tell people that because I was like, listen.
Yeah, no one ever is like, woo, I sank right in and here comes Vishnu and Buddha floating on a cloud. It's like, it's miserable.
And in the process of like trying to do the apps and stuff, I was like, man, this is kind of, I don't know about this. I mean, people love it, but, and then I found a guided meditation to connect you to spirit guides. And I was like, what the hell is a spirit guide? And boy, did I find out that night. And it was like in that moment, all of those, spiritual abilities that I had suppressed, it was like they came flooding back and they awakened in a way that was like even stronger than they were before.
Wow.
So that's how I feel like the light switch flipped for me.
So interesting.
We had such similar experiences. I wouldn't even bother getting into mine, but like, and like similar timelines too. Like, I think similar triggers. I mean, like, I'm kind of like Ryan, where it's like there were all these triggers, but I had this one that was like
reek of energy. It's just pew pew pew. So like you must have really put like a lid. Like,
oh yeah, yeah. Like, I mean, it was like always a thing for me, but like that definitely like that 2017 to 2018 time frame like really woke me up to this inescapable point where it was like this no return. There is no more putting a lid on it. Like you can't. I was going to ask you, Ryan, like what came first, mental health or spirituality? But it sounds like mental health maybe came first, yet then spirituality came in the picture and totally like changed mental health for you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, mental health definitely came first. And like I say, I mean, it's not hard. It's not a long walk from mental health to spirituality.
Really, I love how you say all that because I'm so on board. It's not like, you can't, you go to those healers who just are like, love and light, toxic positivity, just think positive. It's like, bitch, if we don't address what you got locked deep down in the sewer, like, no. Yeah, like we've got to merge both.
Yeah, 100%. And my only spiritual reality before I got into therapy was like the Southern Baptist church that I grew up in, right?
So that's another one. That's a 3. Yeah, y'all do 3 hours. Like, at least Catholics, we did like a 1 hour mass. It's like, woo, no, Southern Baptist is a whole, bless all of you, but
yeah. And my dad, so that's the most, I have Italian on both sides of my family, but the Roman Catholic, like major Italian side is my dad's side. And that's what they did. But I grew up with my mom because my parents were split.
Gotcha.
So I had a taste of the mass thing. And I was like, all right, I don't think that's for me. This is like a little freaky.
No, it's an aerobic workout, up and down and up and
True.
down.
Lost. But yeah, so that was like really church was the only thing I knew about God or the universe or angels or spirituality or anything. And so I think that like, yeah, being able to get to a place where I could see myself in the mirror and not like hate parts of myself was a huge step to connect to the universe. And I think that like, to your point, you use those words that I might actually steal those from you. Like what's down in the sewer, right? Like if you
baby. Yeah.
address that, that's what feeds your subconscious, and your subconscious makes 90% of your decisions. We make 35,000 decisions every day. Studies show
70,000 thoughts. The subconscious is having like a hot moment right now.
Yeah, you can do love and light all you want, and you're going to stay stuck. So you have to have both. You have to have the full range of emotions and experience.
So what does a session with you look like? Because every healer and, has kind of a different protocol.
Well, and you're a certified mental health coach. Yeah. So that's a different side of what we normally would get in the spiritual sense, right?
Yeah, you're a nice blend.
Yeah. So explain that.
Yeah. Well, it really depends on
yourself. Right?
What do you think you're doing?
It really depends on what somebody wants. Like, what are they coming to me for? And what I inevitably find is that, usually clients come to me and then they realize, oh, I want to do this and that. And so sessions will extend out. So I've just started doing like basically where people can combine multiple stuff together. Like they can come for a reading and get Reiki, or they can come for a coaching session and get Reiki, or they can come for a coaching session and maybe they want to work on the subconscious stuff. So we'll do a session where we do hypnosis and stuff. So yeah, there's multiple ways to kind of, crude analogy, skin the cat. But yeah, there's a lot of clients that I have that come to me just for coaching. And then they find that they're really starting to tap in to their spiritual gifts. And so they may come to one of my Reiki workshops, or they may want to learn tarot from me. So I think it really, no one session, I can actually say this, no one client session is alike. They're all, it's fascinating. But I would say the one thing that's different about me from like a therapist is, so I'm a coach. So I don't do a ton of work like in the past. I do need to know some about your background, but I'm not going to like analyze and do all that kind of stuff. But I can provide, you know, like a spiritual approach to how you can view those things. Coaching is a lot about the present and how we can mold the present and the way you understand and perceive it to achieve what you want in the future. That's a lot of what coaching is.
I love that. I just read this quote that's like one of my new favorite Aquarius themed quotes. Of course, I'm Aquarius rising. That says, actually, I literally wrote this down this morning. I'm not even kidding. It says, real generosity towards the future lies in giving all to the present. Beautiful.
I love that. That is great.
That's what you're doing as a coach.
And so many people want to stay in the past. Like they let the past hijack the present and dictate the future. And people love to trauma bond. So I'm sure when they come in to you, they're like just barfing everything up because you have that energy where you're at the grocery store. Both of you, all of us do, but at the grocery store. And it's like, so let me tell you, it's like, I was just asking, I needed a banana. Like,
yeah, where's the potato chips?
Yeah. So that's sometimes getting people out of that mode and being like, all right, we see that, you know, let's work on it, let's heal it. But how are we going to get you out of that loop? There's such resistance to it.
Yeah. I think psychotherapy is really important. Like I have a therapist, right? So I'm not anti traditional talk therapy, where I think that like even the people that are on the forefronts of researching trauma, what they tell us now is that we all have trauma. Like we used to think like you didn't have trauma unless you like went off into war. But really, when they look at a child who's been just like, you know, there's a pattern of abandonment or emotional unavailability in a parent that's really affected them, and they look at their brain under a scan, and then they look at like, you know, truly soldiers or somebody that's experienced violence under a scan, like they're seeing very similar things. Brain does not know how to interpret certain things, you know, and especially early life, because the brain isn't done fully, you know, maturing and growing until it's 23, so, you know, about that age. So if something's happened to you, like a major
for everyone, because we hear like men's brain, you know, you see all these quotes on these dating, you know, for cis women, like men's brains don't finish developing until 35. Don't touch him, sis. Or, you know, like what is the statistic on that?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on who you're asking, but in terms of the part of the brain that I'm referring to that's going to be able to cope, like those mechanisms and stuff, number one, haven't been taught to somebody that's, you know, a young person, but also like it's just we don't know how to interpret rejection. So at an age where somebody has gone through, you know, some sort of abandonment or like I, you know, grew up in a single parent household, had no idea that my dad not being around affected me the way that it did. But where I'm going with this is that traditional talk therapy, they're starting to say, is not the only thing that people that have severe trauma in their lives need.
For sure.
In fact, there's a guy named Dr. Bessel Vanderkolk. That's what it is. Bessel Vanderkolk. Dr.
Bessel Vanderkolk.
Yes. And he wrote a book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I know that book. Okay.
Yes. And
that's why he had such a good title, because that last name is a doozy.
It is a doozy. Yeah, that's why I was like, I had to think about it for a second. But the book is fantastic. And he actually is a really, really fantastic like speaker. Like if you listen to podcasts and stuff of him. So anybody that's listening to this, like definitely listen to his stuff. But so he wrote this book called The Body Keeps the Score, because he and his kind of people in the research world started to find that trauma affects the body. It freezes in the body. And so we're just sitting here having people talk about their trauma, and it's like we're actually re-traumatizing them just by sitting there and only talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
To be other
and then they get high off their story, and then the validation, and it got, like, yes.
Yeah.
You can see it too. It just like floods over them.
Yeah.
And there's no direction from it, because you want to validate people's experience, but at the same time, how many times have you been telling yourself this damn story, having this emotional reaction, going to that spot? How do we switch it? Like, that's where, and I'm on the same. How do we move you this way instead of keeping you here in the same cycle, in the same patterns?
Yeah. So the idea is that doing things that are active for the body can help kind of actually release where it's stored somatically. Because trauma, unprocessed emotions don't just disappear and vanish. They're a physical process in the body, and they store themselves somatically in your organs, your tissues. So if you don't awaken them and release them out of your body, then they just sit there. So traditional talk therapy is an important part of, healing trauma, but it's got to be in tandem with other things. I think they're going to find Reiki is a really important part of that as well.
They're already doing it at John Hopkins, like up north, there are Reiki departments. And in Charleston at MUSC, they had an alternative health division that somehow lost its funding, because somehow, and this is the word on the street, but people started to get better. So, so
go figure.
So they took away, the paid aspect of it, and it was even stuff like massage therapy. It was just things that were basic. But we have a disease management healthcare system. There is no money in healthy people.
Shocking. Oh my God. I have so much to say on all this. I want to kind of go to this topic of, mental health practitioners, and in some ways, like these clinical health practitioners too, right? Versus spiritual practitioners, and seeing these professionals, like how I find it fascinating that as a spiritual practitioner, it is very common to have like your Rolodex of more clinical or mental health professionals that you can refer a client to. Like, so many spiritual readers will straight up ask clients, are you in therapy? Are you seeing a therapist? Why aren't you handling these things? Get a personal trainer. But these other people in the more physical world or mental health world, I mean, I never see them being like, do you have an astrologer? That doesn't happen. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think because they are afraid that they're going to wind up with somebody who really doesn't know what they're talking about, maybe doesn't have the client's best interest at heart. And, also it could just be a personal bias for that practitioner. Mm-hmm. They don't believe in that. I think there's probably also some like restrictions maybe around like what they can and can't recommend.
That's an interesting question, because I have a therapist, shout out to Lisa Larkins, who will, who we refer back and forth to each other. And she's amazing. She's trained in every sort of, deep trauma work. She's EDMR, all those sorts of things. But she's, really the only one. I'll refer out to other therapists. She's my primary one, but she's the only one who gives back to me and is reciprocal in that relationship. Do you have therapists who recommend you? Do you have that reciprocal relationship?
It's interesting. I have therapists as clients. So
beautiful.
Yeah. So there are people I think that are awakening to that, but like even Carl Jung, who, when I was talking about the shadow stuff, that's my guy. Like, he's the father of modern analytical psychology, and he was fascinated by the way the tarot captured the archetypes, which was a major part of his theory. And then the fact that he researched astrology and basically was like, whoa, this is legit.
His 4 basic personality functions. This was groundbreaking work and the foundation of what we know as therapy right now. He identified sensation, intuition, thinking, feeling. Those are the 4 astrological elements: sensation, earth; intuition, fire; thinking, air; feeling, water. That to me is why I just can't get over it. Why can't therapists understand where their own profession comes from? Why don't you get the roots of what you're doing, the work you're doing? Is there a history
class in that? I wonder.
Yes, there's plenty of information out there. And it's like something that I'm like, are they taught it in school? No, I don't. Well, I mean, it's like they have to read this book. This was literally published in 1921. Like, this is like textbook 101 stuff for people who are going into this as a profession. So I know they're reading it, but they're probably also getting that crazy history where Freud and Jung fought, and Freud was like, this is bullshit, but Jung was the one who had this much larger lasting impact, I think, on what we now know as mental health and therapy today. It's just shocking to me. That's why I'm just always floored. There are these therapists who take this much more clinical, black and white kind of approach to things, because I'm like, this isn't where your profession came from. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. So like I think there are some mental health professionals who see spiritual coaches and speakers as dangerous because they do have sloppy language, and they say things like only focus on the positive, and they're and I even really listened to this person and liked them, but there's a spiritual teacher, law of attraction person that talks a lot about, why go back in time and revisit your trauma? Like, that's not what you came here to do. And I'm like, well, you're trying to get this person to manifest things and to follow the law of attraction. But if their subconscious is, got all this toxic stuff in it, like they're going to
totally. Well, or even like Ryan, I know we've like shared voice memos on this subject, but like how people, like autistic people, truly cannot manifest. There is like parts of the brain that are blocked out. They cannot use these like new age spirituality tactics, and for them to fall into spiritual hands and think, I can manifest my way out of like so many of the experiences that I'm having. Yet then scientifically, what we now know, QEEG brain mapping, they can't access these psychic.
But isn't it interesting how, if you talk to anyone on the spectrum, they are accessing something, in this realm that looks like,
for sure.
Look at that. I didn't even know that shade of blue existed until you just.
Right. But I would and that's beautiful stuff. I guess I would just say I get where Ryan's coming from in the sense that there are all these spiritual practitioners out there who don't know. What?
Well, and I think the dangerous thing about, there's garbage everywhere, therapists, but is that there's no body that governs us, so you really have to be a person of integrity and operate in that when it comes to your clients, because
for sure,
who's going to check you, boo?
I know, but then it's like it's so funny to me. I know, I don't know. I could go back and forth on this topic all day because it's like
you can see.
Even
I
doctors,
hope y'all watch this because it's a ping pong going on in your head.
But no, seriously, it's like even doctors have to take the Hippocratic Oath, right? Hippocrates, in the Hippocratic Oath, literally, it says, I'm paraphrasing here, but you should not practice medicine unless you understand the stars. Literally says this. Doctors take this oath. How many doctors do you know who can interpret astrology? So it's really funny how these massive professions that we take so seriously now, and we need, obviously, everybody should be seeing a doctor. I do think so many people should be exploring therapy. but we just don't understand.
You want some gosh darn respect, is what I.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I want respect, but I want people to realize like these things. It's beautiful that like as we progress as society, we are understanding more on a scientific level, right? On the physical senses. Like this is beautiful stuff, but it wasn't always separate. It used to be so intertwined with the energetic reality that people experience.
People are so sick, because when you disregard, you put your mental health over here, you put your physical body over here. That's why we're a hot mess.
For sure. Obviously, there are downsides to the spiritual world. That's literally why we're making this podcast. And spiritual psychosis is kind of like this buzzword that I think is emerging now, and people are really starting to understand what that means. I'm wondering your thoughts on spiritual psychosis, and if you yourself have experienced it, and or if you are working with clients who are in that state of mind, and how do you pull somebody out of spiritual psychosis without like degrading spirituality,
Yeah. Well, I will say I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about my clients, but what I will say, I have witnessed it, and I'll leave it at that. It is a very real thing, and people can get trapped. I think the root of that, and I also think the root of the people on the scientific side that can't see the spiritual side, is everybody wants certainty. Everybody wants to know that they're safe and that things are in order. And the reality is that's bullshit. Sorry if you have to bleep that out. Like you just can't.
We're customer friendly.
There's just no, like, we have to get comfortable. And to me, the spiritual journey is getting comfortable in the fact that we don't know everything and that the world is not painted in black and white, rather in shades of gray. And people want to put everything in a formula, or people want to know the law of attraction and this, that, and the other. And, the reason that, I stubbed my toe is because I didn't take the dog out last night. Like, it's like everything's karmic and cosmic. And it's like, that is just, no, like sometimes just two realities clash, right? And I don't care whether you look at that analytically from a scientific perspective, or you try to make it fit into a spiritual, idea. I don't get into everything as cause and effect like that. I don't think that we know. And I think sometimes people really look for either one to no longer, like, faith in spirituality is no longer a belief in mystery and wonder. It's in like, I know you're wrong. I'm right. Sit the hell down, shut up. And it's like, that's not what it is to me. So I think that's where people can get really trapped. I even see I have a lot of religious trauma in my social circle. I have a lot of people that grew up in church and were just beat up by it, the shame and the judgment and stuff. And a lot of it's that fundamentalist, like trying to make everything fit into a nice, neat little bento box. And it's just not how it works.
So knowing, like, people just go through things in life, right? We've got this trauma, like everybody's experience is obviously so unique. As a person living that human experience, trying to navigate the worlds of spirituality, but also mental health, how do you know what you need? Like, in this space, how do you know when you should go to a therapist versus like a life coach versus like maybe psychedelic therapy versus hypnotherapy? Like, there are so many options. How do you figure out what you need?
Yeah, I feel like we get led to stuff, and I feel like it's not just the modality. I think it's the person. Like, the person who was my Reiki master teacher was the first person that ever did Reiki for me. And I really firmly believe if it had been anyone else in Nashville, it would have been the wrong person. And I found that at a time where I was doing therapy. But remember, therapy was really important to me in my early years. I had a great therapist. So I think it's as much the person as it is the modality. But I would just be open-minded and trust your instincts. Like, if something feels good, then do it. And I think sometimes people can stay trapped in therapist-client relationships that maybe there isn't a good rapport. And sometimes people can be doing Reiki for something that needs a doctor, right? Like, I just had a COVID long haul symptom that came up out of nowhere, and it's bugging me for a month. And I had some Reiki done on it, and it helped. It did help, but I needed some medicine. I am not against any of it. I think all of it has truth, and I think there's something powerful about just trusting, your inner guidance system to get you there. But I think you brought up like I don't know if you were going in like psilocybin, like all the
like ketamine therapy is huge.
I think that stuff is the forefront. I think that's the next step. I really think that's the future.
Which is
interesting. I had a client yesterday who, I appreciate when you were like, I don't want to talk about, my clients. Whenever I never say names, obviously. But I'm like, dude, this is so good. Like, do you care? And most people, when they're in a spot of pain, they're like, please share my story.
Yeah.
Like suicidal tendencies. He's in AA. And so we're working on mindset because, to your point, I love Reiki. Reiki changed my life. But people would leave me and they would feel so great, but everything would return. And so it was like, okay, I need to start getting into mindset. I've got to start we got to get to the root of this. So, I've got my own application process as to how I go with clients. But this guy's lovely. I mean, just the sweetest energy, but life is tough. He's in AA, sober for 5 years. And so just had a session with him yesterday. I'm like, what's up, man? Like, and he's just glowing, on Zoom. And I'm like, damn, like, what, you look great, and he's like, I got on ketamine. And so I was like, I'm an addict. So, back in the day, it was like, Special K was
Special K.
And so, now we have ketamine treatments. And so he was so conflicted though, because he was like, I have a meeting tonight and I want to share, because everyone's like, oh my God. And don't get me wrong, I think AA and anything of that nature is freaking fantastic. If that is, you need that community. But he is so apprehensive to tell his friends about this because of the judgment. Well, you're not sober. Well, bitch, do you want him to be, I'm sober, but dead? Or do you want him and what is that? What is that? He's not on the sauce. Booze is gnarly. Cocaine, heroin. I think we can all agree that these are gnarly drugs. But mushrooms, ayahuasca, Cambo, ketamine.
Yes.
These are helping people, and now it's this interesting predicament. I'm like, well, you don't have to tell. He's like, no, I'm leading tonight. But do not put yourself in that position until you are solid in the fact that ketamine is for me and it saved my life. And so I keep seeing this within this dynamic where it's just like, I'm afraid to tell people how I'm healing based on the judgment of some antiquated practices.
Well, let me help break that mold for everybody who might be scared. Microdosing shrooms. Seriously. I mean, not every day. I've kind of fallen out of the habit, actually. I just had this sitting right here in that combo. But it's great and you don't feel it. It's different than I love taking a hero's dose too and having a whole ass crazy session, But microdosing, you don't feel it. You just kind of notice this little mood boost, but it's really those effects built up over time. I'm totally with you, Ryan. I think that this is the forefront of where things are headed. I'm sorry, when I can buy shroom chocolates now out here, you know what I mean? It's just this stuff is I don't honestly know Wilson, the legality
the Attorney
of it.
General of South Carolina recently said a few years ago that marijuana, cannabis was the most dangerous. I was like, oh, not fentanyl. Not heroin.
But I will say, no, true. But I will say, as somebody who smoked weed so consistently for so many years, I don't remember the last time I smoked weed now. And when I tried again, it's I'm just this is not for me anymore. I'm done with this. Yeah. This is dumb. And we were just talking about Matthias De Stefano, Ryan, and he's this amazing guy, combo for another day. But I was listening to that podcast actually, that I sent you. And he was talking about how he did ayahuasca, which is the mother of all psychoactive substances and whatever. total different conversation. We should do a ayahuasca episode.
Yeah.
But he was at this ayahuasca ceremony with somebody, and somebody brought weed. And apparently the person who smoked weed before doing ayahuasca, the message they got was like Mother Ayahuasca, telling him, how dare you bring that child to me? Like, get rid of that. Like, that is like that is very much how I view weed now. I won't lie. No hate on people who smoke weed, but like, I just can't do it anymore. It makes me feel like I'm lowering myself in a way, whereas it used to open my mind in a huge way. Now it's not doing that for me anymore. So I just like knew to stop. But I definitely think like this is where things are going.
I think that if we use it as a crutch and an excuse not to do our work, then that's when it gets bad. And maybe that's what Mother Aya was saying. I don't know. But I think, if you can use something in a healthy way to help you access stuff that needs to be released, and like, why wouldn't you? It makes so much sense. And you've got these trauma survivors from wars that are coming back, and there's suicidal ideation and everything, Megan, like you were talking about. And they've tried antidepressants, they've done talk therapy, they've done all this stuff. They've been done like hypnotherapy, and it's not effective. But then they do some of the clinical trials that are going on right now with shrooms. Like that's what saved people's life. There's documentaries out there and stuff. So I really think that's the future. It's just we got to figure out the right clinical way to do it. And I think you do it with someone. I think there's something powerful about having somebody to help witness the healing as well, to help guide you.
I love that. Yeah. True. Instead of like all your buddies being like, bro, like if you have someone who can guide you along that process.
I actually had a friend, let me see if it's still posted, who does ketamine therapy for a living. She's this is awesome. Her actual job. Dang. But she posted something saying like, if you want to experience like wonder and awe or whatever, do ketamine or shrooms by yourself or like with a group of friends in a safe space. If you want to heal trauma, do ketamine with a therapist, basically, which I don't actually think that's true, because I have healed my most profound things all on my own in the quiet of my room in a deep ass shrooms state. But I didn't need a therapist for that, but I'm also not going to say like I haven't done shrooms with a therapist either. So maybe that would do something, it's just like kind of hard right now getting into even those trial programs. Like the access is hard. And so I don't know, but I think that's totally where it's going. Do you have any other predictions as far as where you think mental health as a field or profession is headed, or places you want it to go?
Well, I definitely sense that there is a departure that started away from the pharmaceutical companies. I actually listened to a seminar the other day. I was attending a seminar where this guy talked about how like the traditional antidepressant type medicines and stuff, they're really just a Band-Aid. They're just numbing, which we've known. But even just, surprise and shocker, pharmaceutical companies misled doctors and psychiatrists and stuff about the effectiveness of them. And so you've got people that are stuck on these things and they're scared to get off of them. And so I do think that there's going to be a departure away from that. And I think that we're going to start talking more about trauma and normalizing that. And I think that we're going to start talking about complex trauma, which is like, early childhood stuff. And I think that there's probably going to be more merging, I really truly believe, of the spiritual practices like yoga, meditation. It's already happening. And talking about having those spiritual, enlightenment moments where, you're tripping or whatever you're doing, whatever the right word is, psychoactive, as you said. I think all of that stuff it's here, but it's like coming. I think talk therapy will still be here for, I think we still need it. And I think spirituality in general is starting to merge so much with science. Ryan, did I ever tell you about the mediumship experience? So there's a guy named Dr. Gary Schwartz. He's like Harvard, Yale guy. He's at University of Arizona now, but he has actually basically proved mediumship. like with all these studies. Have I told you about this?
I think maybe, but please go on.
So there is this, and it gets into like quantum physics and stuff, which is stuff we would totally nerd out about. I don't want to bore.
We're going to do a whole separate episode on that.
I will make this accessible for people if you're listening now. But basically, there's these tiny, tiny, tiny particles in quantum physics that we know, like, that are the building blocks. So like electrons, photons and stuff. So this is what makes up all of us. It makes up this desk that my laptop is sitting on. It makes up your skin, everything. And so photons are particles of light. And there's this small device that's probably like more expensive than my house that, measures these things. And so it basically can tell if energy or light, if you will, is present or not. And so they did all these experiments with mediums. And so they started to prove it. And then they actually got it published in a journal. And then people started going, well, wait a second, hold on. No. The medium was in the room. So no, you can't say that it was really, spirit coming in. It could have been the medium. So then they removed the medium from the room and had them tell the spirit to go to the room and
take a left, go down the hall.
Right. And this is like hard. I mean, this guy, like Harvard, doctor, like MD, but also PhD, like smart freaking dude. And I think he wanted to disprove it in a way. I don't know if he would admit that or not, but like most scientists almost want to discredit stuff. But
science doesn't have a soul up until recently,
Yeah. And so the idea is that he was witnessing spirit actually coming in and measuring that against a control and seeing statistically significant evidence that spirit actually communes with the medium in the room when they're reading, and can even communicate to the spirit and say, hey, listen, they're doing this research study. Will you go to this room and show up at such and such time? And they did it. And then,
oh, now's my time to shine. I will be in room 202 to fuck that scientist up. Take that.
So they're like measuring light. They're like, yeah, the light in this room, meaning photons, is higher now because of this like spiritual access that people have. Exactly. This is like, I think, such an important conversation because it's where we remove the fluff of this love and light conversation. Yes. This is literally what we mean by light. Like, we see light in the physical sense, yes, but light is an energy.
It was so funny. Scientists, they got so paranoid that somehow they were like affecting it. So then they had this randomized computer thing that basically it would click on, a projector would start, and then the projector would tell the spirit how long to be there for. And they measured it, and it's like they were responsive. They were interpreting the information, and they were responsive.
Incredible.
Wild. So so this is like published stuff, and he's like, all my peers in the scientific community think that I'm batshit crazy, but I did it anyway. So it's wild, but yeah, you're right. I mean, that's the literal light, like not the spiritual bypassing.
Yeah. No, like literal light showing up as evidence of something beyond all of this. Like, that's so beautiful to me. That. Yeah. And I think that's an amazing example of, I think, where hopefully a lot of this is headed, where science, in an effort to maybe disprove or discredit, proves themselves wrong in a way and realizes like, oh my God, I've opened a can of worms and there's something so much more beyond this. It even reminds me of like Brian Weiss, right? Like he was from such a clinical background and then fell into past life regression therapy. Like, and it's just, those are the scientists for me that are like heroes. I'm like, God, you are
they're
really
brave enough to go against, to be like, here it is. Like, you might think I'm nuts, but here's the study, here's the data. What you got to say now?
Maybe I will add that as an addendum to my prediction. Is I think they'll find they used to think that consciousness was produced by the brain. And that actually changed, like I think it was like in the 17th century or something, maybe 18th century, where science started to say that no, the brain produces consciousness. And now I think we're going to go back to where we say that no, the brain receives consciousness like a radio receives radio signal. And if your receiver, the batteries are low, or it's positioned wrong, the antenna's off, then it's going to affect the way that you receive your consciousness and your experience. So I think that's really what it is. I think that our consciousness is omnipresent.
The study of consciousness itself, I think, is just going to grow, and like people's understanding of what that is. I mean, this is 100 years old right now, essentially, like as far as what we know now with ego, subconscious, and Jung's work, I guess, with all of that stuff. I mean, this was 1920s when this stuff began. So we are at the very beginning.
It's like one person ago, yes. What, and a person forward, what's that going to look like?
Exactly. I think we're kind of coming to a nice, healthy conclusion here.
Yeah, Ryan, you're wonderful. How do people work with you? When are you going on tour to sing your magical song?
Where can they hear you?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. It's at the Ryan Hagan, Hagan, 2 A's. And then my website for booking and stuff you can get from there in the link, or you can just go to musicmedium.co. So that's where people book with me. As far as music goes, I don't know, Ryan, I might need to get you to do a prediction for me or something. You can tell me when I'll be going on tour and all that. I'm not able to talk a lot about it right now, but you
do have some cool stuff. Yes. Bubbling up here. But people can at least go onto all their respective music platforms and hear some of what's already
him,
up.
Guys. I mean, at the beginning, he said that he had lost, his Instagram. So
please follow.
Yeah,
I need all the help I can get.
And his content is incredible. Like, he's making really, really wonderful stuff. As you've already heard, he's so well spoken, well read. He is taking both the spiritual and the scientific sides of things. It's so commendable.
Thank you so much. You are a treat. Your energy is wonderful. I mean, this has been a darn delight.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for y'all's podcast too.
Yay! Thank you. So it's going well, and it's hopefully going to just keep going. All right.
Here for it.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And as a reminder as well, if you are interested in booking with Megan or I, or understanding more about us and what clairanoyance is all about, you can go to our website, www.clairanoyance.com. That's what, Megan?
That's your line. Clairanoyance.
That's CLAIR annoyance.com.